everyone. This is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best of New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, part of the family, we are back with the Online Big Blue Brooklyn Hit Squad. How are we doing today, Mr. Hit Squad?
I'm doing great, Tim. How you doing, man?
I can't complain. Just another wonderful day in the world of Online Big Blue. But I want to jump right into Giant topics today. I'm not having any chit-chat because you know what? There's nothing going on in training camp.
Not a damn thing.
When you're wearing shorts and helmets, you're not really doing anything. Let's wait till Monday till we see them strap on the pads. Sad that we only 14 practices and pads. I don't know how this is going to work out in the season, but you know what?
I know.
We're gonna have to keep figuring out. I got to figure out what the new light is because I put up a new camera. So there's the light. So now I know which camera I'm looking into. But I wanted to get into a topic, and I want to do a 2-part series on this topic. And I'm going to basically tell you the topic right now. And the topic is I'm going to give you 3 things that could go horribly wrong for the New York Giants in 2020. And I want you to tell me if I'm off base or if there is some validity to what I am saying.
Okay.
All right.
Let's get it.
Number one thing that I think that could go horribly wrong in 2020 is that the offensive line literally falls apart. Now, let me preface the statement here. We are already looking at potentially 2 rookies starting on the line.
Yep.
We're also potentially could have first-year players starting on the line, taking out, Kevin Zeidler. So you could have, and Will Hernandez, to me, yes, I understand he's a third-year player, but he regressed in year 2. So let's say Andrew Thomas struggles, which then affects Will Hernandez. Spencer Pulley can't cut it at center. Kevin Zeidler is our savior. And either Nick Gates, Matt Pert, Shane Lemieux, whoever else Cam Fleming, falls apart at the other position. What do we think? I mean, what do you think? Is there validity to that worry, or am I just blowing smoke?
I mean, obviously, I think in the realm of football, that could be possible, especially since we only have 14 practices and you can't rule out injury. But no, I think the line will be fine. I actually do think that the line is going to take a step forward in the right direction this year. I thought the line was pretty decent last year, but we have pretty much a whole new line, as you stated. So, we got some young pups in there, but I honestly think that they have the right coaching. I think that, I really like Mark Colombo. I like some of the things that he said, and it really encouraged me to think that this offensive line going forward is going to be tough. They're going to do what they can per game. And, I'm liking what I see so far. So, obviously, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen.
But the question is this. What was Colombo supposed to say? This is the worst line that I've ever seen. We got no one that can block anyone. Of course, any coach, going into the first couple of weeks of practice is going to praise and extol the virtues of every player. That's not, and like I said, I've seen it firsthand. That's not what's being said sometimes in meetings.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. I'm not expecting him, I'm not expecting any coach to, bash their players, bash what they have. They're going to try to say, the most utmost things that they can say, especially about the players. But, I really like, Andrew Thomas. I think Nick Gates or, Cam Fleming could hold the right tackle position for now. Especially with, how many practices we have. My expectations are a little bit down, but I wouldn't be surprised if the offensive line held its own this year.
All right. Question number 2, or circumstance number 2. The New York Giants secondary turns into Pearl Harbor. Bombs everywhere. James Bradbury has no one on the other side of him right now. And you are relying on, hopefully, Valentine, Love, everyone else that we, Holmes, the kid we picked up, in the 6th round, 7th round, I can never remember his name. And we are hoping that not only are they going to be okay on the other side of the field, but you have 2 players, and Peppers and McKinney, that have very similar talents. Some people were saying, well, you know what? Peppers can maybe cover someone in the slot, or, maybe switch over to free safety. Peppers was tried out at free safety, and Greg Williams, who was pretty much, I would say, the defensive guru outside of what happened with the Bounty Gate and everything, but he switched Peppers to strong safety for a reason. And McKinney's skill sets technically lend itself more to playing in the box. Now, he played something like 38% of the time in the box at Alabama. Another 30-something% of the time he did play in the slot. And then he did play like another 20-something% of the time in the free safety position. So he, and it's not that – we don't know what McKinney's speed is because he cramped up at the combine. He never had a pro day, which is why he fell to us in the second round, which was great, which is great variables. So we're not sure if he's going to be able to handle the deep routes. So what is your thought process with the way the secondary stands now that we potentially could have a Pearl Harbor situation? Bombs away.
Yeah, bombs away for sure. Yeah, man. Unless the Giants make any moves on the opposite side, that's actually one of my biggest concerns at the moment on the defensive side, even more than the pass rush, to be honest with you. I want to trust Corey Ballentine. I really want to trust, the players that we have on this roster, but I'm just not confident in the secondary. I really do think that looking out of the DeAndre Baker situation, Sam Beal opting out really affected us, which I'll never take that away. There's every reason to opt out. But, with James Bradbury holding his own, he could only do so much. I would not be surprised if we see some broken plays on our cornerback too if they don't address that position. I do agree with you, though. I think that Jabril – I think he's going to take a step forward this year, but he's decent at coverage. We really got to see with Xavier McKinney and how they're going to use him. I know that he did drop back into coverage sometimes, and he was fairly decent in college, but like you said, we don't know his
but
speed.
in college, trailing a play in college is a lot different than trailing a play in the NFL.
So you're absolutely right. So much different, and that's what makes it kind of difficult because, like you said, he didn't have a pro day. We don't know his speed. So is he going to be able to follow tight ends? Is he going to be able to follow certain receivers?
Well, my concern is if someone's going deep, they're trying to stretch the seam, and Bradbury checks him into the zone and the guy's still running. Is McKinney going to have the speed to follow the deep wheel route? I mean, is he going to be able to keep up with that guy?
Genuinely speaking, I really do think that he will. He seems like a very smart kid, and I think that he has that. He seems, at least from what I've seen, to have that breakaway speed. Obviously, college is different than the NFL, but going back into that question, it is a concern for me when I look at some of the receivers that we're gonna have to go against. Don't even look at Dallas. You look at the Cardinals, you still got to deal with DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. You still got to deal with Philly. You still got to deal with all of these teams that have, for the most part on our schedule, a solid number one and a solid number two. Are these cornerbacks going to be able to hold their own outside of James Bradbury? And that's my biggest concern. I think we should expect to see some broken plays on the opposite side if they don't address that position, which at this point, I don't think that they will. I think that if the contract over money fell out with Ross Cockrell, I don't see them going to get a bigger price free agent. No, and I was excited for that Cockrell.
I actually was too. I thought that was a shrewd. To me, it was. I even called it a Gettleman signing. It's a guy that's not flashy, but it's a guy that you can get on the cheap and knows how to play. But the problem is, evidently, he didn't want to be gotten on the cheap. And there was probably some issues going that he probably wanted some more security going into year two. But you know what? I mean, and like I said, I want everyone to know I am not bashing Xavier McKinney. I love him as a player. I was excited when they picked him. When I bring these up, I am not sitting there. It's one of those things. I'm either called a homer or I'm called too negative. I am not bashing these people. I am bringing up circumstances that could very well happen in the 2020 season. Question number 3, though. This one I find is going to be interesting. We get into like week 7, and we are, let's say, 1-6, and the facade is coming off Joe Judge. Let's say the stucco is falling off. We're getting down to the layers, and we're seeing who he really is. Do we think Joe Judge is his stucco is going to crack if we hit a losing streak? Because I think if he loses the Joe Cool that he is right now, I think the whole season will fall apart for the Giants. So is he going to be like a Shermer who was when he won, kind of a magnanimous prick, and when he lost, it was everyone else's fault? What do we think could happen to Joe Judge if we hit a massive losing streak right off the top of the season? Let's just say, the line falls apart, secondary falls apart, the team is not prepared. Is Joe Judge ready to take the slings and arrows of the New York media?
I believe so. I think we can see so far a difference between him and our past coaches. You look at Ben McAdoo, you look at Pat Shurmur. I just don't think he's that kind of a coach. I mean, Ben McAdoo, he was different. He had this confidence to him, and then when the media got to him,
different's a good word.
Yeah, I mean, when the media got to him, he threw everybody under the bus. Joe Judge doesn't seem like that guy. I think that even if they do go on a losing streak, he's still going to try to uplift these players. Still, I think he's going to keep it the same way, to be honest with you. I don't think anything from him is going to change. And you know what? Even if we were to go on a losing streak like that, I think the argument could be made. 14 padded practices, second youngest team in the NFL, new schemes, injuries, whichever, COVID. So I think that there's a lot of I don't want to call them excuses, but excuses that would be able to be made, that I think that if it came to that and that started wearing down, that he would be able to use. But I don't expect that, to be honest. I don't think that he's a Ben McAdoo or a Shermer.
Oh no, I don't either. No. I think he'll handle the press fine. But like I said, it's everyone's. You know what? Everyone's in first place in preseason. It's not until you start the games, and it's not until you start losing do we really find out the mettle of the man. Because there are guys that can handle losing. Now you got to remember, Joe Judge has really never lost.
No,
if you look at his resume and where he's been, he's really never lost anything. So it would be interesting to see how he handles the adversity if it does quickly fall apart. I mean, to Belichick, when he fell apart in Cleveland, he fell apart with the press and everything else. So I mean, it's and I know that's going back to Cleveland, but that was Bill Belichick, and we all know how Bill Belichick turned out. So I'm not too concerned if he has his moments of being a little tenacious against the press. But like I said, I'm just curious what your thought was if it does happen. Where do you think? Like I said, where do you think? I'm going to give you one more question though.
Yeah, for sure.
This one just popped into my head. Dave Gettleman's first draft class. They always say you can never really tell a draft class until about year 3 or 4. What the players are going to be like. What happens in 2020 if Dave Gettleman's first draft class completely falls apart?
Yeah. I think at that point you kind of have to look at Gettleman. I know that owners want to, came out and said that they want to make sure that he can finish what he started. But if that first draft class is falling apart, if Will Hernandez takes another step back, if Lorenzo Carter doesn't step up in the way that he needs to step up, then I think you got to really just look at Gettleman. Yeah, you really just got to look at Gettleman, and you can make the argument you got to start fresh in terms of management. I wouldn't say necessarily the players, but I would say management for sure. I really have thought about that, to be honest with you, because I don't think that Saquon is going to take a step back.
No, I don't.
But seeing how Will Hernandez played last year, I could only hope that he would take a step forward, but I also wasn't expecting him to take a step back either last year.
I was actually very shocked by Will Hernandez's. I was very shocked. I was very shocked by Will and how he lost his composure a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I mean, he
especially during Philly.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's what I was going to bring. He pulled, I think it was only one personal foul penalty in Philly, but he should have been called for like 3 others.
Oh, yeah.
You know, personal contact penalties. I mean, he got away with a couple of them in Philly. And
Yeah,
I think it was also
and
in the
Dallas
Washington
too.
game, I think it was too. But I was very surprised that he always seemed to be so mentally tough. But then to see what happened in some of those games, it was a little distressing.
Yeah, 2 games that I look to when I think of that, because for me they were like head scratchers, but then when I looked at the situation, I kind of understood. 2 games that I really look at were the last Dallas game that we played, and the Philly game that we played. Not the last game of the season, but
The
earlier in the
first game,
season.
though, yeah.
And when you look at those games, I mean, frustrations can get riled up, especially when you're losing and not playing well. And coincidentally, both of those games, the Giants fell apart. I know in that Philly game we had a strong lead, and obviously that came back to bite us. And I get it, but to me, it's like I didn't understand why he was losing. His cool when we didn't really see that the first year.
No, he was
And
very,
that's what
as
really
a rookie, he
upsetted
was
me.
very composed.
Yeah, and I don't mind my players being feisty. I like that personally. I've been wanting to see that from the Giants for years. Tough, aggressive. But there's a difference between being tough and aggressive and then costing your team penalties.
Well, I was calling him Odell Chippy because you know how Odell got chippy with Josh Norman. That's what he was. He was getting
Yeah.
chippy. And he was losing
Yeah.
his composure, and it just did not seem like the Will Hernandez that I saw the first year or in college. So that's why and I get, outside of Zeidler, he is the elder statesman on that line. And I've always said, if you're going to line up Andrew Thomas next to him, you better make sure that he is teaching Andrew Thomas how to be a pro and how to play. And I get concerned sometimes because if he's losing his composure and he's getting off his block, he could be leaving Andrew Thomas out to dry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Andrew Thomas could also help him as well, knowing that Will now is in a position where he has to be a leader. Last year, Nate had to be the leader for that line next to Zeitler, but now Nate's gone. It's more responsibility on Will, and I think that Will take that, with the utmost to make sure that our rookies are fine and that he could set an example. I think that's really what it is. Setting an example on the line. This is how you become a professional. This is how you play for the New York Giants. And you can't do that when you're costing your team penalties and getting into fights. Now, was it a coincidence that the 2 that I picked were rival games? I mean, I expect, especially when it's Dallas and Philly, for the games to be a little bit more aggressive. Really, Washington, it's the Giants just pound oh my God, I almost keep saying their name, the Washington football team. But yeah, no, I think that at this point in time, Will really just has to sit back and say to himself, I have to be the leader of this offensive line. This is my 3rd year. Now when I was the rookie 2 years ago, now I'm the veteran, and I have to school these rookies on how to be a professional. So I think that he'll take that job more seriously. He seems to be taking it more seriously. I know, again, the argument can be made. What else is he supposed to say? But, you really just got to – I like the confidence that's coming out of Will, and I think that he will be taking this job a lot more seriously this year.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you know what really bothers me about the whole Washington game? It just makes me red and gets under my skin. Sorry.
I can't wait.
Sorry.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
So, now I was really, really thinking about it, and I actually had a subscriber ask me, do I think that they will use Darius Slayton in the same way that Jason Garrett used Des Bryant? And that really had me thinking. I know that I'm expecting this team to be a run-first team. I don't see why they wouldn't be. But given that opportunity, do you think that it's possible that Darius Slayton could go into that same role that
No,
Jason Garrett had Des Bryant in? You
no,
don't think so?
no.
How come?
Two different players.
Okay.
You're trying to compare Darius Slayton to Des Bryant. Now I'm talking Des Bryant early 5 years in his career.
He was a monster.
I'm not talking Des Bryant what he turned into towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking the player that Des Bryant was those first 3-4 years. No, Darius Slayton is still just going to be a second-year player. We don't know what is going to happen with Darius Slayton. The problem is what people seem to always forget. A lot of players, especially quarterbacks and wide receivers and sometimes defensive backs, slump their second year. Why? Because if they played extensively in year one, now the league has 16 weeks of film on that player and understands their tendencies. So to take Darius and say that he could potentially fill that Des Bryant role is kind of ludicrous because of the fact that we don't know what Darius is going to be yet. Teams are no longer going to be able to say, all right, we're gonna double Golden, we're gonna get safety help on Ingram, and we're gonna leave this Slayton guy alone. You can't say that anymore. People are gonna say, okay, we're gonna need, he's potentially going to be our number one option on the outside. So as that, he is going to receive the coverage of a number one option. Mm-hmm. And to say that he would even be considered yet into the class of Des Bryant, early Des Bryant career, that's you don't want to put that on the kid, because if he starts having issues, you don't want to be like, oh, that's Des Bryant. No. And I honestly think that I think the way Garrett's going to tailor this offense, I don't think he is going to go towards that, because like I said, the Garrett hasn't called the plays in 5 years, until now when he was a head coach. He gave up that responsibility 5 years ago when he was a head coach. So he wasn't really him that was it wasn't really him using Des Bryant in certain ways. So I think that Garrett is going to go more of a system that's going to be straight run. I would not be shocked if we see a lot of the old I formation. You got Elijah Penny back there, playing the fullback, a little play, and then work that off of play action, especially early in the season. And like I said, I would be curious to see how the league adjusts to Darius Slayton and how Darius Slayton adjusts to the league. And like I said, I can't say if he is a Des Bryant talent. I can't say if he's going to turn into like a Mark Ingram, who was a good receiver, not great, but good. Same thing. It was like going back even to the 80s, like a Lionel Manuel or Bobby Johnson. Good receivers, won a Super Bowl, but it did not have a long career. And Bobby Johnson, the bus fell off the wheel, wheels fell off the bus on him. So that was more of a drug problem. But like I said, I don't want to put that on Darius. I want Darius just to focus on running his routes, running them precise, holding on to the ball. Because you got to remember, Darius disappeared in some games last year. He had fantastic moments where he looked like a world beater, and then he also had some games where he kind of felt, he kind of disappeared a little bit when we needed him. Yeah. There was that one game, I can't remember what game. Was it the Miami game? Where Eli threw like 7 passes in a row to him. I can't remember which game it was. But like I said, he stepped up. But then for the rest of the game, the defense adjusted. He didn't make his adjustments. So, he kind of, like I said, I think Darius is going to be a fantastic pro, but I don't want to put any type of Des Bryant comparisons onto him.
Yeah, I don't want to really put any expectations on him. I think that with this being a run-first team, at least the way it seems, I think that it will give Darius more opportunities, because I think that more teams are going to stack the box. I think more teams are going to game plan on stopping Saquon.
They're going to be putting 7 in the box.
But, which I think will help Darius. He's a speedster. I think, going into his second year, the slump is possible. But I think at the same time, the games, that he wasn't really – he kind of disappeared. I think, you just have to look at those games and see, okay, what can I do better, and take that into your second year. I actually have another question for you that I'm thinking about right now. So I saw a video, I believe it was yesterday, of Evan Ingram running some routes. And it seemed to me, he looked fluid. He's not in the bubble wrap. But I noticed he looked smaller. And my concern is that I was reading the other day that at the moment, up until I saw this video, Evan Ingram was the smallest tight end in the league in terms of size. If he is getting smaller, do you think that it could be possible, especially with his speed in his hands, that maybe the Giants look to put him at a receiver position, knowing that they lack that depth?
I think right now they still want to create the mismatch on the linebacker.
I would think so too.
And I and I've said it a million times. They went out and got the guy from San Francisco that's 13 feet 6 inches tall. That's one of my subscribers. Yes, he does grow off of every video that I do. So now he's 14'7". Leave him in more.
Next week he'll be 20'2".
He could be. Leave him to block and then still create the mismatch with Mr. Ingram. Yeah, I never really – yeah, I know he's been drafted as a tight end. He's played as a tight end, but I've never really considered Ingram as a tight end.
No, not at all.
H-back, slot back, something, slot receiver, something. But I never really consider him the nice way to put it is he's a hybrid tight end. So, and I think that's
the nicest way you can put it. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I think of Evan Ingram, I think of draft day, and I think of when John Gruden, when he worked at ESPN at the time, he was praising Evan Ingram. He said he has nice hands, he has nice speed, but to call him a tight end is ridiculous. He's not a tight end.
No, he's not.
I don't think that at the time, I don't think that Jerry Reese had the intentions of drafting him just because he is a tight end. I think he drafted him because of the speed in his hands. And we saw last year, look at the Bucs game, when he has that open space, he can take off.
Yeah.
He has the hands, he has the speed, and I think I know Evan Ingram's biggest issue is he just can't stay healthy. Now, you can make the argument he would get less injuries playing at the receiver position than the tight end position. But at the same time, I don't want to fully rely on Levine Toilolo or Caden Smith. Everybody talks about Caden Smith, but nobody wants to talk about all of the passes he dropped. Nobody wants to talk about. I'm going
to back that up for a second because I got blasted for saying that Caden Smith dropped passes. And they're like, well, he only dropped one pass.
I know. And
Caden Smith, and I love this, and I should have said this in the video, and I didn't. Caden Smith had a 72.3 catch percentage. That means when the balls was thrown his way, he caught it 72% of the time, 72.3% of the time. Now, the only issue with that is they also have a statistic called catchable passes. His catchable passes was 92.7%, which means 92% of the time, almost 93% of the time, the balls that were thrown at him were catchable balls. And actually a subscriber said it best. He had a lot of passes that were not considered drops because he did not have possession. He did not have, I forgot how she put it, but she put it so eloquently that he did not have control of the pass. So they didn't count them as drop passes because of the fact that they gave him something. So they're only saying he had one drop or two drop passes and two fumbles. And I'm like, well, if you look at like the Philly game and a couple other games, yeah, he dropped some balls that should have been caught. And so I guess they weren't counting those as drop passes. And they only threw to him deep 4 times. And when your yards per catch is under 10, you're not – I think he was like 8.9, which means you're mainly getting the ball on the flat or somewhere in the middle of the field.
Or like a curl, if anything.
Yeah, that would be
it's I know that you can make the argument, when he was released from San Francisco, they had George Kittle. At the time, they had Levine Toilolo. So it's like, those are two solid tight ends. I think that, he does need to improve on his catching. I don't think Levine Toilolo is the long-term answer.
No.
Hopefully,
especially not at 13.8. 13 feet.
No. Hopefully by next week he'll be 15.2. But no, I mean, I just don't want to rely on those two tight ends. I really like Evan Ingram, but my biggest concern is, can he stay healthy for 16 games? And hopefully we could see that this year. He seems to look good. He seems to look fluid. My biggest concern is just he looks slimmer. And if he was already pretty small, playing the position, getting nicked up, and he looks smaller. I don't know. I'm starting to think that they may have, some schemes or some game plans where he may have to play the receiver position. And I wouldn't want that to come to it, but
you mean the 4,678 undrafted free agent wide receivers we brought in aren't all going to turn to Victor Cruz?
No, I think that honestly, I think they'll be better than Victor Cruz.
Better than Victor Cruz. Flax burst.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be. Listen, at this
Homer
point, every
Jones.
draft we go into, we don't even got to worry about receivers.
Just
wait until getting them in the undrafted free agency. So don't even worry about that, guys. And I do want to say one more thing really quick. Just because, and I'm talking to all of you guys watching this right now, just because we critique certain players, regardless, that doesn't mean that we're bashing the player. I have my one of my favorite players ever is Michael Strahan, but there were still things that I could critique about Michael Strahan. You can like certain things about players, but still critique them. And I think that the sooner that people realize that, people will see it as, oh, they're not hating, they're just giving their concerns about a player. These players can improve. These players can make adjustments, but we're going off of what we're seeing at the moment. So we're not bashing any of these players that we're critiquing. We're not hating on these players that we're critiquing. We're just giving our honest opinion about these players and hoping that they can take that the step in the right direction to the players that we think that they could possibly be.
And on that note, we were actually going to close out the show because I think that is a perfect segment to leave on. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment with the Online Big Blue Brooklyn Hit Squad. I will give you 10 seconds or 30 seconds to wrap it up if you got a final thought or note.
Yes, I do. Guys, I want you guys to tell me below who are you guys excited about to see in this upcoming year? Me personally, I'm really excited to see what Saquon is going to do this year. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I think if this offensive line is improved to where I think it could be, I honestly think he's going to lead this league in rushing. That's what I'm excited for. I want to hear what you guys are excited about. Again, we will continue to critique these players, guys. You guys are just going to have to get used to it.
Well, you know what? Like I said, we are just stating sometimes the obvious. Sometimes people don't want to hear the obvious. Sometimes people would rather just hear how wonderful everything is. But you know what? Every player has its faults. Every player has good points. Every player has its bad points. And on that, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you could like, if you could subscribe, if you could ring that bell, I think you know what that means. That would be awesome.